What's up, Kansas City? I'm your host, Glenn Bryan Frizzell. Today we are filming in the historic 18th and Vine Jazz District at the Lincoln Building, home of Cascade Media Group. Today's special guest is a longtime Kansas City politician. He has been a resident in South Kansas City for over 45 years. We are pleased to have him on the show today to discuss politics and some of Kansas City's business affairs. Please let's welcome 6th District Kansas City Councilman, Mr. John Sharp, to What's Up, Kansas City.
Thank you, Glenn. It's my pleasure to be here.
Mr. Sharp, we're glad that you were able to join us. We'd like to start off by talking about Cerner, if that's okay.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about Cerner's corporation purchase of the 237-acre Three Trails property that included the former site area of Bannister Mall. I understand that's a $4.3 billion office plan. Where is this plan at currently?
Well, we were very pleased that Cerner went ahead and purchased that property because people are always a little leery about these projects when they hear about them if they're actually going to take place. But once you buy the land, you're kind of committed. So Cerner did purchase that land and have been very engaged in demolition of the old vacant buildings that have been there vacant for some time, and they're in pretty bad shape. A lot of them had been broken into and the copper stripped out and things like that. So they are getting the site ready for construction. They still have some buildings to demolish, but the site already looks a lot better than it did with those derelict buildings just sitting there. And they hope to start construction of the first 2 office buildings before the end of this year in 2014, along with the service center. But this will be one of the largest, if not the largest, single office projects in the metro area. And it will be a Cerner office park. It will be for Cerner Corporation. And they plan to go vertical, as I said, on the first 2 office buildings before the end of 2014. And over the next 10 years, they hope to add about 15,000 employees to that area. So it'll be a huge, have a huge impact to benefit Kansas City and South Kansas City, and particularly the Hickman Mills area.
Revitalization of the area. I heard Mr. Sharp, I heard Mr. Boyd on the radio, Mr. Carl Boyd, not too long ago, talking about the hope that this area can generate similar communities. You have Overland Park, you have Olathe, where you build business communities centered around a particular structure, and they encourage, or they sparked interest in other types of development. You'll need movie theaters, you'll need eateries. What can we do to spark the interest in the area? I know at one time we had Bannister Mall, Hypermart, Ventures, Kmart, Circuit City. Right. This is the area I grew up in, Mr. Sharp. I remember it fondly, the heyday of Bannister Mall.
Sure.
Can Cerner bring shoppers a sense of economic vibrancy to the area?
Well, I think whenever you add that many employees, it's certainly going to have an impact on your retail. And of course, I used to do all my shopping at Bannister Mall, so I remember those days too. But bringing 15,000 people, especially folks who are making very good salaries, to an area will spark a rebirth of retail along the Bannister and Blue Ridge corridors, and also bring more people back to the area to live. And now we're having developers become interested in the area again and building new multifamily housing, and we're having people interested in reopening some of the retail stores that have closed. So we think it'll have a great impact, but it's not just Cerner that's going on out there. There's several things that are all coming together that I think will really spark a rejuvenation of South Kansas City, and particularly the Ruskin-Hickman Mills area. Just to the north and west of the Cerner project is a project called Oxford on the Blue. And this is a project by James Stowers to build a high-tech office park similar to Corporate Woods on the north side of 87th Street between I-435 on the east and 71 Highway on the west. And almost all of that land is purchased by now. Last I talked to them, they had a couple of houses left to purchase, but they've got everything else bought. And this went before the City Plan Commission just the other day. Now they postponed action on it because they had to complete a traffic study, but that will be a huge economic boost to the area. Further west along the Bannister corridor, just last week the City Council approved an expansion by Burns and McDonnell. They are buying and will, in a joint venture, the site of the old Jewish synagogue that was there right at Bannister Road and Warnell, and it's been vacant for some time. It's really deteriorated, and they'll be adding over 2,000 highly paid employees to that site, and we just approved that last week. So with Cerner on kind of the east end of the Bannister corridor, Burns and McDonnell on the west, and in the center is the old Bannister Federal Complex. As you know, the National Nuclear Security Administration is moving out of that to their new facility on 150 Highway and Botts Road, which is just north of Richard Scabower. It's in Kansas City. But the federal government has committed to demolishing those old 1940s buildings on that site, to cleaning up the ground contaminations, to get the old Bannister Federal Complex ready for redevelopment. So you're going to see tremendous redevelopment along the Bannister corridor, but sometimes the government has to be the first in. There's no question that some private developers were a little leery about developing in that area, so the city really had to take the first step, and we did, because we approved the new South Patrol campus for the police department just on the south side of Bannister, just on the south side of Home Depot. And that's the new headquarters for South Patrol, the new headquarters for the Special Ops Division, which is traffic, K-9, bomb squad, all of those units. And it looks like a college campus, and it's very visible from Bannister, it's visible from I-435, it's visible from 71 Highway, and it really does look like a college campus. It does not look like a public safety facility. But once the city made that investment, then suddenly the folks at Cerner got a lot more interested in the area, and other corporations got more interested in the area. So sometimes we have to be the first in. We did that on Longview Road, where the YMCA had moved out, and the grocery store, the Apple Mart there at Longview and Blue Ridge had closed, and the shopping center was, facing some tough times, and we invested $8 million to improve Longview Road. It used to be a little two-lane asphalt street, and people would be walking in the street, kids would be walking in the street, or you'd see older folks, walking in the mud and on the shoulder. And now we've expanded that where it's 3 lanes. You have a continuous turn lane, you've got storm sewers, you've got bike lanes on both sides of the street, and you've got sidewalks. So people and kids don't have to walk in the street anymore. And we've opened the Bay Water Park. This is the 3rd summer it's going to be open. It's drawn over 30,000 people each of the last 2 summers, despite some unseasonably cold weather last August. Mm-hmm. And we're opening a new attraction there. In fact, it's going to open up this Memorial Day weekend. That's right, the Bay Rider. It's a surfing simulator. It's only the 2nd one in Missouri. There's one down by Branson. They don't even have one at Oceans of Fun.
Wow.
And it's going to just draw young people to it. So when we made that kind of investment, then suddenly we were able to talk to Save-A-Lot and get them to reopen the grocery store there now. So now we've got a brand new grocery store in the old Apple Mart facility. It's doing very well, but sometimes the government has to be the first in.
We're scooping oceans of fun. Sometimes the government has to be the first in. When we talk about redevelopment projects in South Kansas City, I have to take my pencil out, and take notes, because I am a product of South Kansas City. I'm very interested in development projects in South Kansas City. What will it take to make sure that these projects see their way through, that we just don't get talking and get something off the ground for it to not have any type of effects in South Kansas City? What type of work will it take by the City Council and by private businesses to ensure that we do have a Cerner campus, a Burns and McDonnell campus, Oxford and the Blue campus, and continued investments?
Okay. Well, on the Longview Road projects, that work is done, and the grocery store is reopened, so I think we can kind of say that one's been put to bed. On Cerner, I'm confident that will go ahead because they bought the property. They'd really be nuts to walk away at this point. Now, if you just have an option on the property, you can always say, let me look somewhere else. When you bought it, when you've laid out that kind of money, you're going to go ahead with it. Oxford on the Blue, they've bought the property. They're only, and as we talk, they may have closed on these two houses, but they bought that whole tract of land. There were just two houses they still hadn't bought, and they were very close to getting them. So again, they put their money on the line. The Burns and McDonald project, that's a joint venture with Van Trust. They bought that property, and you're going to see demolition of the old synagogue this summer. So, I mean, these projects are going to go ahead. Once you've bought the property, you can pretty well count on them moving ahead with it. But the school district in Hickman Mills is also taking some steps forward that I think will make the area a lot more attractive for businesses and for residents. This August, the Hickman Mills School District is going to be, to my knowledge, the first school district in the whole state that will have mandatory and free pre-kindergarten services for 4-year-olds. There are a lot of school districts that have services for some 4-year-olds, but not for every 4-year-old, and this will be free pre-kindergarten services. That's a great attraction for young families to get their kids ready for kindergarten so they're ready to learn when they walk through the doors. And I know Hickman Mills is the first school district on the Missouri side of the metro to do that. So that's really a big improvement and helps attract people to the area.
Now, enlighten me, the 6th district covers what area?
Well, it's kind of gerrymandered now since they redo the council lines. It looks kind of funny. It basically is everything south of 470 and 435 on the east side, and then you get over to Holmes and Troost, and it goes north along those two streets. It takes a little zigzag and goes north to 59th Street. So it does have that Ward Parkway corridor. Traditionally, the 6th district has been South Kansas City, basically the area south of 87th and Bannister. So it looks a little weird, and the 4th district look a little weird since they redrew the lines. But it does have most of South Kansas City, but now it does go quite a ways north on the west side.
Councilman Sharp, may I ask you, what are your main concerns for the 6th district of Kansas City?
Well, I think the main concerns are to bring more jobs and businesses to the area, because when you have more jobs and businesses, then it's certainly a more attractive place to stay. And we think these major developments will have an effect on bringing more retail to the area, because we don't have much retail in the Hickman Mills School District. We have to drive quite a ways to find certain services that used to be there. But once you bring this many more highly paid employees in, then retail will follow. There will be some retail in conjunction with the Cerner project, but it's mainly an office project. It's not a blend, but it will have some retail. But you'll see retail springing up around these major projects. And I think the school district improvements also will attract people there too. The Center School District is a great school district. I mean, it's one of the highest achieving school districts in the whole state. But Hickman has had some challenges. We've got a great new superintendent now. I think we've got a very stable board that works together well. And the Cerner company, the Cerner Corporation, will be donating $6 million as part of the agreement on the tax breaks they got on their development to the Hickman Mills School District to enhance education in science, technology, engineering, and math. And they'll also be contributing $2 million for neighborhood improvements to revitalize the neighborhoods around there and make them more attractive for their employees to live in. So I think as you bring more jobs, you bring more businesses, you work with the school districts to further improve them, then I think a lot of the other problems kind of take care of themselves.
Mr. Sharp, tell us a little bit about your background. Were you born in Kansas City, Missouri? Where did you go to school?
I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and left there when I was 2, so I don't remember a whole lot about that, but went to high school down in Paola, Kansas, which is about 40-50 miles from here, and then I moved to Kansas City, Missouri after I got out of college in '67, so I've lived out in the Ruskin-Hickman Mills area since 1967. Got my undergraduate degree at KU. I got my master's in public administration at UMKC. Served 10 years in the Missouri House. Served 8 years in the council, but then took a 16-year break and then came back, and I've been back 7 years, and this is the last term, and served a couple of terms on Hickman Mills School Board as a volunteer member of the board.
How's the Kansas City that you moved to in '67, that area, Hickman Mills, Ruskin Heights, how's that area different today than it was when you moved there?
Well, we've had some challenges. We've had some vacancies in the housing because as some of the jobs left and some of the businesses closed down, we've had people move out. And now that we're bringing the jobs and the businesses back to that area, we anticipate those homes are going to start being filled real quickly. We've still got some very strong homes associations and neighborhood groups out there, but you know, whenever you have a lot of vacancies, it certainly adversely impacts your neighborhoods. But now that the jobs are coming back, we think the people are coming back too. We think the school district's on the right track and taking some very aggressive steps to improve public education. And I think the police department has done an excellent job under Chief Forte, who grew up right there. He's a Ruskin grad too. And his mom still lives out there in Stratford and runs the before and after school programs at Burke Elementary. So we've had a lot of police attention to make sure that we make this a safe area, and the department has really done a good job in that regard. So I think things are really looking up for South Kansas City, and I'm looking forward to the years ahead.
Awesome, awesome. Let's talk education. I've had conversation with one of my cousins who has a son that graduated from Ruskin and a daughter who he's currently concerned about. She's at Smith Hill, and he says that the behavior of the other students prevents her from learning, so he's seriously contemplating sending her to a private school. I remember being at Smith Hill. I remember wanting to learn. All he wants is a safe neighborhood, a high-performing school to send his daughter to. You talked about Dr. Carpenter's first year, Cerner contributing to Hickman Mills School District. Is there something that we as a community should be doing to promote the importance of education among ourselves?
Well, I think more community leaders and business leaders and civic leaders and leaders of the faith community need to become more involved with our public schools. And I'm hoping that before I leave the earth, we'll see a time in Kansas City when every public school at least is adopted by some group that can really work with the kids in those schools and provide the mentoring and the resources that sometimes the school districts just can't afford to do. You know, the way Missouri funds public education is pretty crummy. Number one, the state doesn't put in enough money overall. Number two, the way they divide the money really isn't fair to urban and suburban areas like Kansas City or Hickman Mills. And a lot of kids today are basically raising themselves. They're from single-parent households. A lot of them are being raised by other relatives, and they aren't getting the support that really ideally they should get. So if you get more businesses involved, more civic organizations, more churches, and get them to adopt a school where their members or their employees can mentor those kids who sometimes aren't getting a lot of guidance at home, where they can provide some resources to provide some of the things the school district can't. Those are the kinds of things that our faith community and our neighborhood leaders and civic leaders can do. A neighborhood organization can adopt a school and provide some of that help to the school. And I think also parents need to be more involved. I know it's awfully tough. You know, I was a single parent after my divorce and was raising my son, and fortunately he was in athletics, and that kind of helped him, you know, stay on track, because I wasn't there as much as I really wanted to be. But parents sometimes think, well, they can get real involved in their kids' education when they're in elementary school, and then as they get older, they kind of back away a little. The kids need them more in middle school and in high school. And that's when they really need to continue to work with their kids to make sure they're taking the toughest courses. Don't let them take the easy courses, because that sure doesn't do them any favor. Make sure they're taking the toughest courses they can pass, and work with them on getting college scholarships. The high school education just isn't enough today. Now, you either, if you want to do well in life financially and just from a satisfaction standpoint, you need either a college degree or some type of advanced technical training, or the military offers careers for people, but a high school degree just doesn't cut it anymore like it used to.
What high school did your son go to, Mr. Sharp?
He went to Hickman Mills,
Hickman Mills,
and I'm hoping that someday that can be a high school again, because there was a great rivalry between Hickman and Ruskin, and my late stepdaughter went to Hickman too, and so we've always had a love for that school and a love for the school district.
You talked about community leadership. We recently had Kerry Palmer, who was elected to the Hickman Mills School Board. We had him on when he was running for that position. Have you talked to him?
Talked to Kerry quite a bit. He's a great young neighborhood leader. I supported him, was very pleased to support him for the school board because he's paid his dues. And I'm at the point now where I really don't support candidates for office if they haven't shown through their actions that they care about their community. Anybody can say, oh, elect me and I'm going to do all these wonderful things and I really care, but I want to see some evidence of that. I want to see somebody who's spent some time doing volunteer work to make it a better neighborhood. And you don't have to be old like me to do that. There are plenty of volunteer opportunities for young people like you. And Kerry is a perfect example of that. He was head of the Kansas City Neighborhood Advisory Council. He was head of the Fairwood Homes Association. He was one of the founders of the South Kansas City Alliance. So, I mean, he put in the time as a volunteer to show that he cared about the community. So when he decided to run for the school board, I was very pleased to support him.
Now, Councilman Sharp, are you an advocate of social media? I know that the devices that we have nowadays, we can communicate to almost anyone, any place, at any time. Our motto here at Cascade Media Group is the internet is the wave of the future. The wave of the future is us, and that wave is now. What are your feelings when it comes to social media?
Well, I think it's a great new way to communicate, and my son is teaching me.
Okay, all right. What words of advice do you have for my generation, Mr. Sharp, who grew up on hip-hop, MTV, Video Soul, CDs, Walkman, Nintendo, PlayStation, Hot Summer Nights, cable, Bannister Square, pagers? That was just an excuse for me to take a walk down memory lane there. Really, we were the first and early second generations to benefit from the struggle to integrate schools and homeowner associations. These fathers and older cousins were really the first in our families to move out of the inner city, send their son or daughter to Smith Hill and Ruskin or Hickman Mills High School. How do we become actively part of our communities? You mentioned volunteer and give back when others are leaving.
Well, I think giving back is the key phrase. I've certainly talked to my son a lot about that. He's biracial and faced a lot of the same issues of discrimination all young people of color do. When he was trying to get onto the pro baseball team, he traveled really all over the country, little places I'd never heard of, to have tryouts, and he was pulled over every place he went just to kind of check him out. So we understand the situation that people of color face, but that is no reason not to be involved. In fact, it's a reason to be even more involved. And for young people who do have a social conscience, for young people who are articulate and intelligent and educated and are becoming that way, it's never too early to volunteer. You have to give back. And the people that don't give back, I don't think they may have lives that seem successful, but I don't know how satisfying they'd be. I think volunteer work is some of the most rewarding work you can do. It obviously doesn't pay anything, it's volunteer work, but you get rewards other than monetary awards. And I think it helps people career-wise too. Whether I'm not just talking about running for public office or getting appointed to this or that, but I think more and more businesses are looking for people that have shown that they're about more than themselves, that they have invested in their communities, they do care about the communities, because I think those are the people that make the best employees.
Thank you, Mr. Sharp. I have to ask you about the red light district, the cameras.
Yes.
Where is City Council with that? Are we going to be putting them back up anytime soon?
Well,
tickets?
the court, there are two court cases that really threw a stumbling block up into the use of red light cameras, although they've been tremendously successful in reducing T-bone accidents and fatalities at the intersections we've had them. There was a legislative fix that passed the Missouri House, but it didn't pass the Senate. That would have provided that you can use red light cameras, but you couldn't assess points for them, and of course we haven't assessed points. But with that failing, now there is a case that's working its way through the courts that hopefully it will resolve the issue and allow them to be used again. They're not popular, nobody likes them, but they've dramatically cut down fatalities and T-bone crashes at the intersections we've had them. I would hate to see us assess points for people running red light cameras, because you don't have to have an effect. Just the $100 fines have had a tremendous effect in changing driver behavior. You don't have nearly as many people running red lights, and I may be a little off on this, but I think it was 86% of the people who got tickets from red light cameras here in Kansas City never got a second one. You know, once was enough. Now my boy, he hates when I talk about this, he got two of those, one here, one in Atlanta, so he needed a little remediation, but the last one was several years ago. And another 11% of the folks never get more than two, so you don't really have to beat people over the head with a ball bat for them to get the drift. 86% of the people get one ticket and start slowing down. And since they've been off, boy, I've seen the videos of people running the red lights on Bruce Watkins, and it's just amazing. We've had an increase in wrecks. It's amazing we haven't had more, because these are people just blasting through them. And you see people slam on the brakes or swerve to get out of their way, but it really is dangerous, and they have saved lives, and they have saved people from injuries, and serious injuries and property damage, because T-bone wrecks are pretty serious things. So we hope that we will be able to utilize them again, because they've proven they worked.
And Councilman Sharp, what else are you working on with City Council?
Well, one of the issues that I'm involved in now is to oppose the privatization of our ambulance billing here in Kansas City. We had defeated this measure 11-0 a while back, and then it was reintroduced to bring it before the council again and assigned to another committee. But this is one of these things that some of these ultra-conservative groups that are pushing so-called model laws around the country is doing. This push for privatization, a lot of it came out of a group called the American Legislative Exchange Council. It's a group that was founded by a bunch of ultra-right-wing Republican legislators, and they get a lot of their money from some of these ultra-conservative corporations and the Koch brothers and groups like this. And the American Legislative Exchange Council promotes privatization of government jobs, always saying, oh, the private sector can always do it better and cheaper. They're the ones that have pushed all these voter ID laws, saying that we've got all this voter fraud, which is just mythical. They're the ones that have pushed the stand your ground laws, which certainly have led to some tragic instances. And they're pushing that here and claiming that they could collect more money and do it cheaper than our city employees doing it. But the fact is, this company that this ordinance would have us contract with, Intermedics, was involved in a massive patient identity theft. And one of their employees, one or more of their employees, was selling patient information like social security numbers and everything to a crime ring that was using this information to file phony federal income tax refunds. And 32,000 people who were patients that were served by agencies that this company contracted with, in 27 agencies in 17 states had their identity stolen. 32,000. And then the company sat on the information after the feds notified them of this breach for 2 months before they notified any of their clients. Well, you know, I think even if you're for privatization, which I'm not, that would be the last company I'd want to contract with. And usually privatization, the only way they save money is they pay their employees less money and give them crummy benefits and no retirement. And I don't think we want to be a Walmart type city. I think we should offer city residents decent living wages to work for the city. And this company's out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You know, and this is who we'd contract with, and they say they're going to collect so much more money, and yet the contract only penalizes them. They don't even have to collect what we're collecting now. I mean, if this isn't a sweetheart deal, I don't know what is. So I'm hoping we can beat this thing. We've beat it once. I hope we can beat it a second time, and we don't have to beat it a third time. But it's just not right, and I think Kansas Citians should be concerned about it.
All right, Councilman Sharp, any final words?
Well, I appreciate being here. I really appreciate what Cascade Media does to let the public know what's going on, because the major media doesn't cover a lot of the real stories, and sometimes it takes organizations like Cascade to let people know what's really going on kind of behind the scenes.
Well, thank you, Councilman Sharp. We are definitely going to have to do diligence to keep up with what's going on and stay informed of the happenings in the 6th District of Kansas City. What's up, Kansas City? Today's special guest was Mr. John Sharp, Councilman of 6th District, Kansas City, Missouri. Go online, check out more video, www.whatsupkansascity.net. And remember, the sky is the limit. Aim high. Shoot for that moon. If you miss, at the very least, you would have landed among the stars. Thank you. Take care until next time. Thank you, Councilman
Sure, yeah,
Sharp.
my pleasure, my pleasure.
Everything go pretty expected?
Yeah, no, went great. Went great.
You spoke pretty well there without notes.
CMG wants you to always remember, the victory we call success goes to the best prepared. When you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Thanks.